The door opened and he looked right through me. Not past me. Not around me. Through me. The way people look at a piece of furniture that has been sitting in the same spot for so long it stops registering as anything real. My son-in-law stood in the doorway of the house I helped pay for, wearing a button-down shirt pressed so perfectly it looked like a costume, and he said, "Sorry, ma'am, this is a private event. I had driven 9 hours to get here. I had stopped twice for coffee, once for gas, and once because my back was screaming at me somewhere around mile marker 214 on Interstate 40. I was holding a wrapped gift in both arms and smiling so wide my cheeks hurt, and my son-in-law was about to close the door in my face. That was the moment everything started. My name is Carol Whitmore. I am 64 years old. I taught 3rd grade for 27 years. I make the best lemon pound cake in Asheville, North Carolina, according to my daughter, who I had not seen in 11 months. I am not a dramatic person. I do not make scenes. I do not believe in airing family business in front of strangers. But what happened that afternoon in Scottsdale, Arizona, on a Saturday in March, changed what I believe about silence. Let me take you back to how I ended up standing on that porch. My daughter Megan met Brandon at work 2 years before the pandemic. When things shut down, they moved in together quickly, the way a lot of young couples did, hurrying towards something permanent because the world felt so uncertain. She called me crying one night and said she was scared, and I told her what I always told her. "You are stronger than you think you are, baby." She laughed and said, "I got that from you." Those were the good months. Then the calls started getting shorter, then less frequent. Then I would text and get a reply hours later, something brief and cheerful that answered nothing. I chalked it up to the pandemic. Everyone was struggling. I was working from home, attending my school district's video meetings in my kitchen, trying to keep 23 8-year-olds engaged through a laptop screen. I did not have room to worry about every small thing. The first time I tried to visit, Megan said it wasn't a good time. Brandon was working from home and needed quiet. The second time, she said they were repainting the guest room. The third time, she said she'd come to me instead. She never did. Something always came up. A work deadline, Brandon's family visiting from Sacramento, a cold that turned into a sinus infection that turned into another reason. 14 months passed. I saw my daughter's face only on a small screen. The engagement was announced in a group text. 1 photo, a ring, 3 exclamation points. I called immediately. Megan answered, sounding happy but slightly breathless, like she was standing in a room where she needed to keep her voice down. I told her I was thrilled. I meant it. Then I asked when I could meet Brandon in person. She said soon. She always said soon. The wedding was small. Pandemic restrictions were still lingering enough to give them an excuse to keep it to 20 people. I was not one of the 20, Megan cried when she told me. She said she was sorry. She said Brandon's parents were local, and it was complicated with numbers, and she wished it was different. I told her I understood. I made her promise to send photos. She sent 4. In every photo, Brandon was smiling at the camera. Broad shoulders, confident jaw, the kind of smile that photographs well. I saved those 4 photos. I looked at them often. That is the only way I had ever seen my son-in-law's face. 4 photographs taken from a distance, none of them close enough to memorize. We had spoken twice on video calls, both times with a bad connection that froze his face every few seconds. I knew his voice better than his features. That is why he did not know me at the door. And that is why I did not immediately understand what was happening when he looked at me like I was no one. "I'm sorry," I said, adjusting the gift in my arms. "I might have the address wrong. Is this Brandon and Megan's house?" He looked me up and down once. Quick and practiced. "It is. Like I said, it's a private party." "How do you know them?" Something cold moved through me. A ripple of wrongness, the way lake water feels when something passes beneath you even though you cannot see it. "Brandon," I said slowly. "I'm Carol, Megan's mom." His face did not change the way I expected. There was no quick embarrassment, no widening of eyes, no immediate rush to apologize. He tilted his head slightly. One corner of his mouth shifted upward. "Megan's mom lives in Asheville," he said. "She doesn't travel." I stared at him. I drove. I wanted to surprise her. He crossed his arms. Casual. Unhurried. Like a man who was used to making decisions about what was allowed to enter his house. "Megan didn't mention you were coming." "It's a surprise," I said again. "I'm her mother." He looked at me for another long moment. Then he said, "I'll go get her. Wait here." He did not invite me inside. He stepped back and closed the door to a gap of about 4 inches. I stood on the porch listening to the sound of 30 or 40 people talking and laughing on the other side of that door, in the house my $12,000 had helped buy, and I waited like a delivery person. I heard him say her name somewhere inside. Megan's voice came back, higher than I remembered it, a short exchange I could not fully make out. Then footsteps. The door swung open. My daughter looked at me like she was seeing a ghost. "Mom?" Her voice broke on that one word. "Surprise," I said softly. She covered her mouth with both hands. Her eyes filled immediately. She stepped forward and pulled me into a hug so hard the gift box pressed between us. I held her tight, and over her shoulder, I watched Brandon watching us from just inside the doorway, and there was something in his face that I could not name. Not happy, not warm, something careful and measuring, like a man doing arithmetic. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" Megan said into my shoulder. "I wanted to see you," I said. "It's been too long." She pulled back and looked at me, wiping her eyes with the back of her wrist. "Of course, come in, come in." She reached for my hand. I followed her inside. The house was beautiful. I will give Brandon that. Open ceilings, clean lines, the kind of careful decorating that takes either talent or a lot of money. There were people everywhere, plates of food on every surface, a playlist moving from one song to the next. This was a housewarming party. Megan had mentioned it in a text 3 weeks earlier. She had said it was small. This did not look small. Brandon appeared beside Megan almost immediately. He put his arm around her shoulders in the particular way that is about positioning rather than affection, and he smiled at me with the same careful expression I had seen in the doorway. "Good to finally meet you in person," he said. "You too," I said. "Megan, honey, your cousins have been asking about the tour." He looked at her. Not a question. A cue. She glanced between us. "Oh yeah. Mom, can you give me just a few minutes? Get yourself some food, I'll be right back." They moved away together. I watched them go. A woman standing nearby handed me a glass of water with a kind smile and said, "Beautiful home, right?" I said yes. I found a chair near the window and sat down and told myself I was overthinking things. But I have raised a daughter. I know every version of her voice. And something in the voice I had heard for the last 11 months, short, careful, slightly breathless, matched something I was seeing now. Megan did not look free in her own house. An hour passed. She did not come back to me. She moved through the room the way a good hostess is supposed to, laughing and refilling glasses and touching people's arms. Every time she drifted toward me, something redirected her. Brandon was very good at redirection. A hand on the back, a name called from across the room, a look from across a conversation that she always answered the same way, adjusting her course, changing direction. I watched him do it 4 times before I understood that I was watching someone be managed. I found her in the kitchen eventually, alone for 30 seconds while she refilled a platter. I came up beside her quietly. "Megan," I said. "Are you all right?" She smiled without looking up from the platter. "Of course. Why? You seem—" "Mum, I'm fine. It's just a lot of people." She carried the platter out to the dining room. I stood in the kitchen for a moment. On the counter, her phone buzzed. The screen lit up. I was not trying to read it. I was not looking for anything. I glanced at it the way anyone glances at movement, and what I saw made me go still. The notification was from a contact saved as Brandon's phone. The message preview read, "She's going to ruin tonight. Just give her the guest room and deal with it after." I looked away. I looked back. The screen had gone dark. My heart beat somewhere it shouldn't have up in my throat. I walked back to my chair by the window. I sat very still while the party continued around me. I thought about what I had raised my daughter to deserve. I thought about the 11 months. I thought about the 3 attempts to visit that had all turned into nothing. I thought about the voice I had not been able to name in Megan's voice until now. Fear. Quiet, well-managed fear. The party wound down slowly. People said their goodbyes over 2 hours, the way people do when they have had enough wine to make leaving feel complicated. By 8 o'clock, the house was almost empty. One of Brandon's friends helped carry trash bags to the garage. A couple Megan introduced as neighbors stayed to help with dishes. Megan found me finally, settling onto the couch beside me, tucking her feet up under herself the exact way she had since she was 9 years old. For a moment she was just my daughter again, the girl who used to fall asleep against my arm during movies. I felt the tightness in my chest ease slightly. "I'm glad you came," she said quietly. "I'm glad I came too," I said. She looked at her hands. "I know I've been bad about calling. I chose my words carefully. I've missed you." She nodded. Something moved across her face. Then Brandon appeared from the hallway, and it was gone. "Carol," he said pleasantly. "Megan and I should probably get to cleaning up. Big day tomorrow." He looked at Megan. "Right, babe." She stood up. "Automatic." "Right. Mum, let me show you to the guest room." Brandon was still smiling when he said, "Actually, I've been thinking. With everything we have going on tomorrow, it might be easier if Carol stayed somewhere nearby. The Marriott on Camelback is really nice. I can pull it up." I looked at him. He looked back. Friendly. Helpful. Impenetrable. Megan was quiet for 2 seconds. I counted them. "Brandon, she drove 9 hours. I know. Which is why she should have a comfortable room." Another 2 seconds. "She can stay here." He let the smile hold for one more beat. Then he said, "Of course. Whatever you want." He went back down the hallway. Megan turned to me. She looked exhausted. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I took her hand. "You don't have to apologize for anything." She squeezed my fingers. The neighbors left. The friend with the trash bags left. The house went quiet. I could not sleep. I lay in the guest room, which was clearly not used as a guest room. There were 3 boxes stacked in the corner and no extra towels, and I listened to the house settle. Just past midnight, I heard raised voices from down the hall. Not screaming, controlled, the kind of argument that has been refined into something quiet and precise, because both people know how to keep walls between themselves and the rest of the world. I heard Brandon's voice first. Even from here, I could pick out certain words. Boundaries. Uninvited. Disrespect. Then Megan's voice. Smaller. "She's my mother. She just wanted to see me." Then his again. The word distance twice. Then silence. In the morning, Megan made coffee, and her eyes were puffy in the corners, and she smiled at me over the rim of her mug, like nothing had happened. Brandon came into the kitchen, kissed her on the cheek, and told me warmly that he hoped I'd slept well. He seemed genuinely pleasant. That was the most frightening thing about him. After breakfast, Megan went to shower. Brandon and I were alone in the kitchen for the first time. He poured himself more coffee. He leaned against the counter. He was still pleasant, still unhurried. But the door was closed and we were alone, and something shifted slightly in the architecture of his politeness. "I want you to know," he said, "that Megan and I are very happy." "I'm glad," I said. "We've built something good here." He looked around the kitchen. At the house. It took a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice. I watched him. "She's had to let go of some things," he continued. "Old habits, old dynamics. That's just how it is when you build a new life. Old patterns have to make room." I set down my coffee cup. "What patterns are you referring to?" He smiled. "Nothing specific. Just some people struggle to let their children grow up. They hold on too tight. They make their kids feel guilty." A small pause. Megan used to feel very guilty. She's worked hard on that. The word landed with precision. Guilty. He had been telling her that calling me was a form of obligation, that missing me was a form of weakness, that I was something she needed to grow away from. "Brandon," I said quietly, "my daughter calls me less in a year than she used to in a week. I've tried to visit 3 times. I haven't been able to reach her on her birthday 2 years in a row." He raised his eyebrows. "That's strange. She said you weren't available." We looked at each other. I said, "I want to speak to my daughter." He said, "Of course. She's in the shower. If you're listening to this, and your chest is tightening the way mine was in that kitchen, stay with me. Because what I found out next was worse than anything I had imagined, and I need you to know what I did with it." Megan came downstairs with wet hair and the careful brightness she had been wearing since I arrived. I asked her to sit with me for a minute. Brandon said he had some calls to make and went to his office. The door did not fully close. I spoke softly. I did not make accusations. "I am 64 years old, and I have learned that the most important conversations are the ones that feel the least like confrontations." "Megan," I said, "can you pull up our call history? Just the last 6 months. She looked at me with something careful in her face. Why? Please, I said. She took out her phone. She scrolled. Her expression shifted slowly, the way a face shifts when it is rearranging its understanding of something. That can't be right, she said quietly. I called you last month. You called me in September, I said. Before that, March. She kept scrolling. I texted you, I said. Read the thread. All the messages are from me. Her face went pale. Not quickly. Slowly. Like colour draining from a watercolour painting, left in the rain. I thought you were busy, she whispered. Brandon said you'd mentioned being overwhelmed with school. That you needed space. I took her hand. Gently. I retired 2 years ago, sweetheart. I have been waiting to hear from you every single day. She stared at her phone. At the thread. At 11 months of my messages and almost none of hers. Then she stood up. She walked down the hall. I heard the office door open all the way. I did not follow. I stayed where I was and I breathed slowly, and I listened to her voice, which was no longer careful or small. It was the voice of a woman who had just understood something that had been kept from her for a long time. She was asking questions, and she did not stop asking when the answers came back wrong. I raised her that way. I always told her, the question is not the scary part. Stopping the question is the scary part. His voice was low and steady at first. Then it was not. Then Megan said something I had not heard her say to anyone since she was 16 and furious about a curfew. She said, "Do not lie to me right now." Not right now. I closed my eyes. When she came back to the living room, she sat down across from me. Her hands were shaking slightly. She put them flat on her knees. "He blocked your number on my old phone," she said. "Before I got the new one, I thought you'd stopped reaching out as much." She exhaled. "He told me you said the drive was too far, that you didn't think we needed to see each other that often now that I was married." I believed him. She looked at me. "Mum." I believed him. "I know," I said. "He said you were." She stopped. Started again. "He made it sound like you were the one pulling back. Like you were the one who didn't want to be involved." I kept her hands in mine. "I drove 9 hours to surprise you." Her eyes filled. "I know." We sat there for a while just holding on to each other. The kind of quiet that comes after something breaks is different from ordinary quiet. It has weight to it. You can feel it pressing. Then she said, "There's something else." I waited. She looked toward the hallway. "The down payment on this house. Brandon told me his parents helped. A gift from his side. He made a point of saying it was from his side." She looked back at me. "Last night I was going to grab my laptop to show you some photos, and I accidentally opened his email." A long pause. "Mum, there's a transfer confirmation. $12,000. From your account. 8 months ago." The room was completely silent. "Did you send that?" she asked. I said. "He called me last spring. He said you were both trying to buy before rates went up. He said he was too proud to ask, but he was asking anyway. He said not to tell you because he wanted to handle the paperwork himself, and he'd explain everything once you were settled." I stopped. "He said you knew." Megan's jaw tightened. "I didn't know." Brandon appeared in the doorway. He did not look pleasant anymore. He looked like a man who had been several steps ahead of everyone in the room for a long time and had just watched that advantage disappear. He looked at Megan first, then at me, calculating something. "Let's all take a breath," he said. Megan stood up. "Did you take money from my mother?" It was not a question. She said it flatly. The way you say something when you already know, and you are giving someone the single opportunity to tell the truth before you proceed without them. He said, "I was going to pay it back," Megan said. "Did you take money from my mother?" "It was a loan. We needed to move fast on the house. I was going to tell you, Brandon." He ran a hand through his hair. The pleasantness was gone entirely. What was underneath it was not rage and it was not remorse. It was calculation. He looked like a man trying to find the angle that still worked. "You were overwhelmed," he said to Megan. "You were stressed about the move. I handled it. I was protecting you." "From what?" she asked. "From knowing that my mother helped us. From feeling like we needed her." He said it simply, like it was obvious. "I didn't want us starting our life in a house that came with strings attached to your mother. I wanted it to be ours." The room was very quiet. I stood up slowly. My legs were steady. I had cried enough in the last 2 days to last me a while, and now I felt something past tears. Something clear and calm, the kind of feeling that comes when you finally see a thing plainly. Brandon, I said, I did not give you that money to own anything. I gave it to you because I love my daughter. I don't need credit for that. I don't need a seat at the table or a place in the story. I just needed you not to take her from me. He looked at me. For the first time since I had arrived, he did not seem to know what to say. But you did, I said. You blocked her from me. You borrowed money under false pretenses. And you convinced her, slowly and quietly, that the distance between us was my choice. I picked up my purse from the chair. That is the part I cannot forgive. Megan was crying now. Mom, I'm not going anywhere, I said quickly. I'm not leaving. I'm just done being quiet. She came to me. We held each other, and I felt her shoulders shaking, and I thought about every call she hadn't made, every visit that hadn't happened, every month I had sat in Asheville telling myself she was just busy. She was just building her life. This was what happened when daughters grew up. All of it rewritten now. Not distance, not growth. Someone else's hand on the dial, turning us slowly apart from each other. Brandon sat down on the couch. He seemed to have run out of angles. What do you want to do? Megan asked him. Her voice was very quiet and very steady. She had stopped crying. That was more frightening to watch than the tears. He did not answer. She said, I want the $12,000 back. I want to see the phone records. And I want to understand how much of the last 2 years has been real. He said, You're overreacting. She turned to look at him. That's the last time you're going to say that to me. He looked at her, and I watched him understand that something had shifted that was not going to shift back. I have taught 3rd grade for 27 years. I know the moment a child understands something permanent, it has a particular stillness to it. I saw it in my daughter's face. She was not going to unsee this. He left the room. We heard him on the phone with someone, his voice low and tight, a different voice than either of us had heard before. Megan and I sat at the kitchen table, and I made us both fresh coffee, because that is what I do when things break. You make something warm. You sit down. You stay. She said, I keep thinking about the last 2 years and trying to figure out what was him and what was real. What felt real? I asked. She thought about it. Loving him felt real, she said finally. Missing you felt real. The guilt about the distance felt real. She wrapped both hands around her mug. He used the real things. That's what makes it hard. I nodded. That is the particular cruelty of it. You cannot disown the love because someone borrowed it for bad purposes. Over the following week, things moved in the way these things move when the truth finishes surfacing. Brandon's parents, when Megan called them, did not know about the $12,000, his mother cried. His father said he was sorry. They were not bad people. They had raised someone who had learned to take what he needed and call it protection, and they were as surprised as anyone to see it laid out plainly. Megan filed a police report, not because she wanted to punish him, because the detective at the Scottsdale precinct told her that what had happened, the financial fraud, the deliberate interference with her communication with me, needed to be documented. The officer she spoke to was a woman about my age, who listened to the whole thing without interrupting once, and then said, You did the right thing by coming in. I was in the waiting area. I heard her say it through the glass. I put my hand on the cold plastic armrest and breathed. Brandon hired a lawyer. The $12,000 was repaid in 2 installments over 30 days, per the agreement Megan's own attorney arranged. I did not ask for anything beyond that. I had not lent the money expecting anything back, and I did not need the repayment to prove anything. It was simply the part of the story that had a clean answer, and clean answers matter when so much of everything else is complicated. Megan is still in the house. She asked me once if I thought she should move. I told her what I always tell her. That is not my decision to make. What I told her is that she does not have to decide anything before she is ready, and she does not have to perform certainty she does not feel. I am 64 years old, and I can tell you that the most exhausting performance in the world is pretending you already know the answer to a question that is still forming. What I know is this. I drove home from Scottsdale on a Tuesday morning in March, 8.5 hours back up through the high desert and into the mountains, the road long and mostly empty. Megan called me 3 times. Once to tell me she'd talked to a counselor, once to tell me she'd eaten dinner, once to say nothing in particular. just to hear my voice. I talked to her for 40 minutes about nothing, about third grade, about the pound cake recipe I was going to make when she came to visit, about the dogwood tree in my backyard that had started blooming early this year. 40 minutes. Just talking. It was the most I had spoken to my daughter in 11 months. I did not take it for granted for a single second of it. There is a thing I used to tell my students when they were afraid to raise their hand. I said, the question you don't ask is the one that stays with you forever. Ask it, even if your voice shakes, even if you're not sure. Ask it and find out, because not knowing is always worse than knowing. I think about that now. I think about how many months I told myself Megan was just busy. I think about how many times I swallowed the question because I did not want to be the mother who held on too tight. I had been so afraid of being what he told her I was that I became distant, absent, quiet without anyone having to force me. Silence does not keep peace. It just keeps someone else comfortable. I went home with a tired back and a full heart and a phone that rang that evening and every evening after that. My daughter's name on the screen, her voice on the other end, real and present and mine. That is what I nearly lost. And that is what I am never ever going to let go of quietly again. If this story stayed with you, if it made you think of someone you've been meaning to call, please take a second to like this video and leave a comment. I want to know, is there someone in your life you've been too quiet about missing? And make sure you're subscribed to Silver's Revenge Story, because the next story is about what happens when the person doing the hiding is the one you trusted most. And sometimes, what they were hiding was the best thing that ever happened to you.